This video contains content that may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Terry Crews made an appearance on CNN with Don Lemon. And as usual, Terry Crews makes sissified statements. But what is so shocking is that, of all people, Don Lemon had to check this guy, if I may call him that, on what he is saying about the group, the organization, Black Lives Matter. All of those intimidating muscles, only to be used to play the flute and to allow men to grope you. Instead of him just worrying about his muscles on the outside, he should have worried about that muscle on the inside, his heart. The guy has no heart, and he just comes off as a big muscle-bound sissy. That is it. And from his statements that he made during this interview, it is quite evident that he has a bone to pick with straight black men.
You say you're willing to die on this hill. You've taken a lot of heat for this. Explain what you were thinking and why it's so important that you die on this hill.
Well, again, I want to bring up the fact that, there are some very, very, militant type forces in Black Lives Matter.
I guess when he's saying there are some militant type forces within the Black Lives Matter group, I'm guessing, that he's talking about men that are not going to take no crap. Men that are the opposite of him.
And what I was issuing was a warning. It's one of those things where I've been a part of different groups, I've been a part of different things, and you see how extremes can really can go far and can go wild. And then when you issue a warning, and when a warning is seen as detrimental to the movement, how can you ever have checks and balances? In the 60s and 70s, airplanes went down all the time. And the reason they found out why they did was because the pilots could never be questioned. And when you have the leaders of the Black Lives Movement who are now talking about, if we don't get our demands, we're going to burn it down. Other black people who are talking about working with other whites and other races.
These other blacks that you are talking about that are trying to work with other races, man, what are you? I mean, that's what happens when you let a sissy do the talking for a man.
They're being viewed as sellouts or called Uncle Toms. You start to understand that you are now, being controlled. You're not being treated as loved. You're actually being.
See what happens when you let sissies in the group? Here it is. We are getting killed at will. And this fool is talking about he don't feel loved. This man here is proof that this man is gay. Because watch his body movements during his interview, how he places his words, how he looks. Don't look at the muscles, look at the man.
Control. Someone wants to control the narrative. And I viewed it as a very, very dangerous self-righteousness that was developing that really viewed themselves as better. It was almost a supremacist move.
So let me jump in.
Where they viewed that their Black Lives mattered a lot more than mine.
Okay.
Terry Crews, what are you talking about? Who paid you to get up here and do this interview? Did they brief you on what to say? Evidently they did not, because you are just talking, rambling, saying a bunch of things that does not make any sense.
So let me jump in here. There's a lot that you said. You think Black Lives Matter is, you said you think it's an extreme movement? Because it's now part of the...
No, but this is the thing. It's a great mantra. It's a true mantra. Black lives do matter. But when you're talking about an organization, you're talking about the leaders, you're talking about the people who are responsible for putting these things together.
I got you. So let me, but
different thing.
Terry, you realize that even during the civil rights movement that Dr. King was seen as extreme. That movement was seen as extreme. To people who don't want to make change, movements are seen as extreme. You can paint them easily as an extreme when they are not.
Why should Terry Crews want change? Everything is going along good for him. I mean, he isn't getting choked out by the cops. I mean, it's like he likes being on his knees begging. So, he don't want change. He wants the leader of Black Lives Matter to be some type of little wimp like him that somebody can come in and grope and take over the damn movement.
This is very true, but also when you're talking about MLK, you're talking about Nelson Mandela, and even Malcolm X, they all realized that you had to have a non-racial component to these kind of movements, or there will be resentment. There will be get back. There will be, one of these people will tend to, listen, I don't want to move from one oppressor to the next.
In other words, Terry Crews is just fine with the oppressor he has now. He treats him good, let him marry one of their kind, get to do interviews, get to talk down on the very black men that probably bullied him and pushed him around when he was a kid, the reason why he probably wanted to be muscle bound. And it's just proof. You have all these muscles, but you are still a damn wimp.
And one thing is really
who's the next oppressor? Who's the next oppressor?
Oh, when I describe this, when you look in the city of Chicago, there are 9 children who died by gun violence, by black-on-black gun violence, from June 20th all the way to today. And you're talking about, even with the Atlanta child murders, there were 28 kids who died in 2 years. You're talking about a month, and you have 9 black kids, and the Black Lives Matter movement has said nothing about this.
What does that have to do with equality, though, Terry? I don't understand what that has to do with equality, because listen, there's crime. There are people in those communities those people aren't just being nonchalant about gun violence. I lived in Chicago. There are many people who are working in those communities to try to get rid of the gun violence. The gun culture in this country is prevalent, but I don't understand what that has to do with a movement that's for equality for black people. It's not mutually exclusive that if you care about equality for black people, that somehow you're going to stop random violence or, unfortunately, kids from being shot. It just seems like apples and oranges.
It's not that way. This is the thing, Don. Black people need to hold other black people accountable. I said this the same thing. This is the Black America's version of the Me Too movement. If anything is going to change,
what he says is true, is that we should hold other black people accountable. But we do. And that is the reason why you are being handled the way you are handled, is because we are holding you accountable for the things that you do. Big grown man, muscle-bound grown man, let some little white boy grope him, fondle you, and you did nothing. And you want to holler about how mean and militant black men are. Lord, hey, if this is one that needs to be sent back, this is one that needs to be sent back.
And this is the thing, too. There are a lot of great, great people there who are held hostage, by people who literally are running these neighborhoods with violence and then claiming that Black Lives Matter. When you look at the parents of these little kids who are saying, hey, man, why aren't they speaking up for me, too? They're speaking up for me, too. They're speaking up for me, too. And then this is what I'm saying. When I look at this whole thing about, it's about who is controlling the narrative. It's got to be all Black Lives Matter. And what's happened is that because I even challenged it, because I even questioned and warned people,
Terry,
I became sick. If I told you to wear a mask,
but Terry,
it want to kick you out.
You're a high profile person. You're writing things out there. You know you're going to get backlash. You know people are going to respond to what you're saying on Twitter. So I don't think you should be surprised by that. I have a skin as tough as an armadillo because of what I do, and I think maybe you should adapt that. But here's what I have to say. The Black Lives Matter movement was started because it was talking about police brutality. If you want an all Black Lives Matter movement that talks about gun violence in communities, including, black communities, then start that movement with that name. But that's not what Black Lives Matter is about. It's not an all-encompassing.
The problem I see is these gay folks, including Terry Crews, always want to get recognized separately from the group. He's talking about all black lives like all black lives don't matter. We didn't say gay black lives didn't matter, or some idiotic thinking black person's life doesn't matter. Gay people have excluded themselves from the group. Well, what about gay folks? What the hell about gay folks? Why are you trying to make your issue different from all the other black folks who are getting killed and abused by police? So it's you gay folks, Terry Crews, who don't want to come together with the groups that we have organized already. You want to come in with a whole different agenda. We talking about black lives. What about gay lives? Just stop it.
So if you're talking about, if someone started a movement that said, cancer matters, and then someone comes in and says, why aren't you talking about HIV? It's not the same thing. We're talking about cancer. So the Black Lives Matter movement is about police brutality and injustice in that manner, not about what's happening in black neighborhoods. There are people who are working on that issue, and if you want to start that issue, why don't you start it? Do you understand what I'm saying?
But when you look at the organization, police brutality is not the only thing they're talking about.
I know that, but I agree, but that's not what the Black Lives Matter movement is about, Terry. Black Lives Matter is about police brutality and about criminal justice. It's not about what happens in communities when it comes to crime, black on black crime. People who live near each other, black people, kill each other. Same as whites. 80-some% of white people are killed by white people because of proximity.
Very true.
It's the same thing with black people. That happens in every single neighborhood. But that doesn't, again, I'm not saying that's not important that those kids died, but it's a different movement.
Listen, I understand what you're saying. I totally understand. It is about police brutality. That should never be accepted.
Whenever you hear a black person going against the grain, saying things contrary to what other blacks are saying, supporting things that the original groups do not support, look who that person hangs around. Look who that person sleeps with. People like Terry Crews, they don't support organizations like Black Lives Matter, any type of group that is going against the grain, because Terry Crews is fine just where he is. He doesn't mind being groped. And I'm just not going to talk about the man's wife like that, but she doesn't look too feminist, if you know what I'm saying. And could she be a tranny? Black men that are about that business, man, they can spot out a coon. And people like Terry Crews trying to mask his cowardice through his muscles. But a real man can see through all of that. He can look into your soul and see the sissy in you. And you felt that. Oh, there's too many militant men in that Black Lives group. They won't let me join. And why do they always find somebody like Terry Crews that has that same viewpoint? Nobody do they interview that has a viewpoint from the Black Lives Matter group. It's always a black person that they find that is going to say things contrary to what the masses of the black people are saying. Malcolm X spoke about this. He tried to speak about Malcolm X. And that is blasphemy. Because you have you don't have the right to even speak as a black man. You know, I say this all the time. You have people out there that are really cowards. And the cowards don't want the men to fight. But if you scared to fight, you step back and let the soldiers do their job.